everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us this evening. So I guess I feel like up until this episode, we've been talking about ice season. And I think we're actually finally at that point where even by us, the ice is finally really, I was going to say breaking up, but you know what's funny is it's all just finally melting. We have some lakes by our house where I swear they were good until just a few days ago. And now finally it's melted until just there's like a little piece left in the middle that's floating around. So I think we are actually taking this weekend and we are going to visit some family for the Easter weekend. But after that, I think we are going to have a pick of the waters, like wherever we want to be might be open after this.
Yeah, it looked like it was good. We did a drive last Sunday, and honestly, like within 40 minutes of our house, like in any direction, almost every lake, like the melt line was 40 minutes south of us. Like we showed up at a lake and we could have launched because the ice was like kind of like floaty slush. But the wind was blowing right into the launch, and it was so slimy. We were like,
it was like the grossest muck. It would have coated the whole boat.
So
I don't know.
So we're not. I don't think we're completely done. Over by Green Bay, I think we still have some good fishing left over there. But I think on Sundays we're gonna stick around the house, just kind of keep tabs on our little panfish friends. Go say hi. We haven't seen them for a while.
I guess that's true.
But yeah, so yeah, we did we did a little midweek night fishing. We took an hour and a half drive over to the Bay, Green Bay, and did a little night fishing, and that was fun. Emily caught a pretty nice one. And yeah, last weekend we did the same thing, kind of just jigging and doing some cranks and stuff like that. So a little bit of everything.
I have to say, big nod to BAC Guide Service. I can't say it was an officially guided trip. I think he was off the clock technically. But that's the thing is like when you have friends that are guides or, friends that aren't guides, even I guess this is still true, you learn so much. What we thought we were going to go out and do that evening is not how we ended up fishing. And it's funny because we started the evening without him. And so we tried a few of our things, this, that. And what was our biggest battle is the wind.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. We pretty much wasted an hour and a half just like trying to drive the boat in the wind. And the wind was parallel with the current. And so like I've drifted pretty fast before, but I've never drifted at 5 miles an hour. And that's what we were doing. So we could have been like drift trolling crankbaits if we really tried. But no, we just kind of wasted some time. And then
BAC got the boat. And
yeah,
then we had a whole different plan.
He taught us a little bit, showed us a little bit of
but we can't tell that.
Areas
if you want those secrets, you book him. Because that's what he's doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The secrets are safe. But truly, I mean, this is an interesting time of the year because as we were talking about ice out and that being a transition, this is also transition. All of these different spawn patterns as fish are moving through all of these different, the water is warming up. They're doing different stuff. They're moving location to location, all these different transitions. The key, I think, is keeping up with them because the bite changes really fast. And I guess, fish where the fish are. Because like I said, keep track of them.
Yeah, I mean, and we've been hearing some really good reports from some of our friends. Some of our some of our viewers have been saying that the panfish bite has been really good, just a little bit south of us. So, that season's upon us. Where people are fishing shallow, and that's a good time to start looking at stuff. I know we just kind of upgraded our tackle boxes, and we got to go through our tackle boxes. I just told Emily the other day, like I looked in the top of my Lakewood case, and it literally looks like a junk drawer. Like it's not even usable right now. It looks like an earthquake went through there. So it's a good time to get through all your tackle, do all that kind of stuff.
And more on that later.
Yeah.
But we will bring more on that later. Probably little videos and things along the way, because that's going to be our process and transition to, I guess, the rest of open water. And I have so much panfish to go through. I'm excited, honestly, to reorganize all of it and make it a little bit more useful for me. So, I guess without further ado, I'm laughing at the comment section as Troy is saying hello from stormy Hastings. And I think our guests are also in a stormy location. So before they lose power or get hit by a tornado, let's bring them in. And I have to say, your title says just Tom Sieburg, but there's two Sieburgs here with us this evening. So could you both say hello, introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself for people who have not met you yet?
Hey, James.
Yeah, I'm Tom Sieburg, owner operator of Tom's Guide Service, tournament angler. I do a lot of different sport shows for different companies. Kind of all in the guide world. I live in Nebraska, and we do some guiding here, and then I spend my winters in Webster, South Dakota guiding. So,
I'm Jacob Sieburg. I pro staff for a bunch of companies and I work shows, do some tournament fishing, and I'm the son of one of the best walleye fishermen I could ever ask for. So,
oh my gosh, I don't know if I've actually ever seen Tom blush like that.
Yeah, I still, when people, I had a good spat a couple years ago, and people bring it up, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I still just kind of like, yep, it is what that was then, and then everybody's like, oh, you still got to be proud of it. And I'm like, I'm proud of it, but now it's on to see how much more I can do. So
sometimes he has to show it off a little bit, show me the ring sometimes. But
that's really funny. We kind of mentioned starting off the show about, learning things from guide services, and you guys run a guide service, but you guys, I would also say, are people that I learn a lot from. And, the funny thing is, I would say that there's like not a huge amount of people in this world that I follow, and I actually kind of tend to follow you guys, but I have not heard, I've missed out on some of your recent happening. So tell us about how like ice season went for you, or the end of ice season, or transitioning. You guys have had open water for a while now, isn't that true?
Yeah, it's ice season was kind of had some weird spats this year. We had really good ice build up in Webster, and then it kind of stalled, and then we didn't have snow, and then we kind of had some lakes that had that that global effect, where greenhouse effect, I guess, is where the ice is kind of not forming because the sunlight penetrating with the darker bottom. So it was interesting at times. And this year really kind of made you think about before you sat in a spot, because we had such crystal clear ice on so many different lakes that especially the perch fishing was very difficult, because it was loud and you casted a shadow all the time. Especially in the snow bear. It was, usually when you're running a snow bear, you have the luxury of some snow, and it kind of keeps some of the sound down. But this winter, we just did not have it. So it was kind of different. And then the ice came off. We had no ice here at home. Jake, when did you tell me that you guys lost ice?
Like late January, early February.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, I was in between my demo boat sold. So then we were kind of without a boat, and then got a boat. So we're back on track now. So
so when was your first time back in open water this year then?
Actually, for me, it was just a week and a half ago.
Honestly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, you're right on target with the rest of us. Though.
Yeah. Latest date that I've had in a long time. I know Jake's done some open water from shore with his buddies. So.
And how has the shore fishing been?
Good on a couple of the local ponds, but when you get out to those big waters, it's been so windy that you can't really do anything out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a whole bunch of people who are checking in the comment section. So hello to everybody, first of all. But we have a few specific questions here. So Corey's asking, what is the best crankbait for shallow walleye? I almost said shallow water. Oh, shallow water walleye.
I think I really enjoyed the last, year or two, the hit sticks. A lot of people think about casting them, but we've done pretty good pulling them, either long lining with mono or even with lead core. So we found that those kind of work really good. I mean, I think it's more based on color and size more than what crankbait's the best. I know that's kind of a vague answer, but in today's world, there's so many crankbaits. I mean, I think there's times that Jake shakes his head when we unload the boat come wintertime. It's Plano box after Plano box. And I know there's times that he just kind of goes, Dad, you really need all these? I'm like, yep. And then there's times he's like, well, we need this color. Where is it? You know, and I'm like, see, told you. So it's one of those deals. I try to tell people it's more, number one, match the hatch. You know, if you got shad in your lake, shad size baits, you know, and then start going from there. If you got dirty water, I personally like darker colors with a rattle. And I think that's why that hit stick is so well. It is loud. It does go through the water quite nice. So
I like the Rapala old school J frames. I like those a lot for those shallow water. I feel like they go through weeds so much better than a lot of the other ones. But like he said, match the hatch on a lot of them. If you got bluegill imitator, crappie, smaller size crappie, shad, like a lot of those other ones. And then when you got crawfish involved in that, you want to match that too.
What's your favorite one, Emily?
Oh, the one that catches fish. I know that's a stupid answer, but I guess here's why is because I think where we fish, it's either a game of like choose something dark like purple, or you choose like neon green perch. You know, I just, it's funny. It just depends on, I don't know. I can't say I'm the world's best walleye fisherman. That's why we have our guests on.
I was going to say my favorite one is the ones that I find up in trees that I put in my tackle box.
Okay. Fair. Yeah, fair. We were actually just earlier this year. We were just floating around, you know, and I was like, oh, look at, there was literally just
we were just
used the net, scooped it right up.
Yeah, it was just out in the water. It was pretty.
It was not shallow water though.
No, that was.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. So, you know, we're talking about colors, I guess. So you mentioned a whole bunch of colors. Do you guys have favorites? Like, what's your go-to?
I'm more of I have some really funky custom colors done up on a lot of different baits. And some of them would really surprise people when they start digging through and looking at them. Like I have some that I got one that I call the sour watermelon. It's antifreeze green with hot neon pink stripes.
Oh, cool.
It's matter of fact, that was the number one bait at Huron we fished when we fished for the world championship again last year. So it's, you know, it just kind of depends. For me, I like the custom colors, and I know there's different ones that Jake's like, but I've really gotten into the custom color one, which is not a cheap one to get into. So, you know, it's just something that's different. And that's, I think, why I like it, because it's not the same thing everybody else is probably using. So
that's why the fish like it.
Most of the time I like, it's either like a pearl white or it's going to be an all straight black or green pumpkin. It's like either I go all like bright colors or I go all dark. There's like really no in between most of the time.
Yep, that's Emily too. I think that's funny, Tom, that's your favorite color, because here, you know, us crappie people call that electric chicken.
Yep.
You know, but I like sour watermelon a lot better. It sounds a lot less weird.
Well, you're saying, okay, sour watermelon was green with hot pink, but electric chicken.
Yeah, I mean, lime truce. He's saying bright green. It's like that lime truce color. I guess electric chicken is chartreuse, so it's more of a yellow. And so
with purple.
Oh, there you go.
See, the fish can tell the difference between those two.
It's easier to find in the boat too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when you're going out right now, are you guys using crankbaits? Are you using jig and plastics? Are you using minnows? Tell us more.
So for me, I really like drop shot or a jig and a minnow over this time of year. That's my preferred. You know, I would rather catch them that way than pulling cranks, but it depends. If we're guiding, there's times that pulling cranks or long lining different baits is just a better option for the clients in the boat. So
I like a lot of like a jig and a night crawler. That's something that I've got into a lot of these past few years. I like that a lot. I feel like that's one of my biggest confidence baits. And then a tungsten Northland, probably about an eighth with a eye candy, one of the black ones. So most time black on black or black on white. So
Oh, okay. Oh man, I actually love hearing that you use worms because I feel like shout out to worms. I don't know, you just don't hear about that much online. Some people are so set in plastics or minnows or this or that, but it's like, of course, putting a worm down there like a whole chunk of meat is gonna, catch an eye and that scent. And plus, if you leave a little tail and it has that trailer fish, will love that.
Yeah, we probably use, I don't know, I think there's times when that's all we use is night crawlers. I mean, there's different times, different baits. There's some that you can put a night crawler on. I mean, we've even tipped crankbaits with a chunk of night crawler. So I think and a lot of it for us is different bodies of water because, for people that don't know, with us being in Nebraska, I travel and guide, in various different places, do tournament, we did the tournament in Lake Huron. That was our first time being on a Great Lake, so the adaptation, trying to adapt to different bodies of water, different clarities, different bait fish is always something that I know I enjoy, just because it's something new. You don't get that same lakes you're going over, every time you go out. So.
And also on those Great Lakes, it's like, okay, we're prepared to go out on this spot. And then we shoot like a mile down, get this spot and stay in water. So it's like you have to have multiple rods rigged up for this kind of big body of water. And it's like one day they're acting this way, one day they're not there and they're out deeper. So on that kind of body of water, it's just like you could have zero confidence going in day one, and then you could catch them day one, feel confident that day, and then catch zero fish second day.
So on an average day when you're not guiding, like you're going out fishing, how many rods do you bring?
Oh, I'll let Jake say how many rods he usually claims because he's really good. He's got a few of his own JT rods he's gotten over the years, but he tends to claim more than what he's got. So I'll say how many he likes to pick and pre-rig for himself.
So I usually pick like 4 to 5 at least to have some of those more action kind of rods, and I got one that I usually drag and one that I usually snap jig some kind of bait on it.
Yeah,
that's not too much out of the question.
Yeah, I try to have at least 4 to 5. I think that's why he's just got it because he's seen me over the years. Like I try to have, we know we're going to this body of water, even when we're fun fishing. Like it's like, okay, it's this time of year, the water temperature is this. We'll essentially just like a tournament. We pre-rigged the night before and get 4 to 5 rods that is kind of our confidence baits, and then of course we always got some more that are just kind of on standby in case we need them. And that's I've had many people when we open the rod locker just shake their head, and I'm like, you just never know. Like it's sometimes it's dumbfounding how many rods we have in there, but there's been times and I'm glad that we got every single one of them in there. So
some rods we might have the same exact rod, but one rod might have 8 pound and one might have 6, and sometimes that 6 pound is just better than the 8. It's just you could have the same bait, same everything, but just the way that the line is like making that bait, like the way just it makes it move could like save the day almost every single time.
I like that a lot. To be honest, I think that there's some truth behind that. Okay, so when we're talking about favorite rods, you sound like you have some go-tos. So what are these rods that you're rigging up?
Most of the time I like a JT mag light to mag medium light, and then for my Ned rigs, I'll usually just go with JT panhandler around like that 6-7 foot range. I really like that kind of rod.
Okay, so stupid question. Are you using the panhandler for walleyes?
Yes.
Because the sensitivity?
Yep.
But you still feel like it has like enough, like you can still get the fish, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a couple big catfish on that rod too. It's just, I can tell like when I'm dragging it, oh, that's grass. I like snap it up. That's a rock. That's sand. It's just you can always tell what it is, and then you can always tell if it's a fish or not.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to ask you this question too, just in case the answer is different. But I really like your theory about using a light rod because I have to say, shout out to JT Rods. we already talked about this. We're not going back to this story. But this past winter, when I caught this big brown trout in the harbor, I was using like a walleye, like a light rod, and everyone was making fun of me. Oh, your
You're
little
using a
rod.
gold
You're using,
digger.
yeah, actually, yeah. Everyone was like, oh, your little rod for trout. Let me tell you what, we landed that fish. But I think it was because, like you said, like the sensitivity of that rod. So, Tom, is that something that you agree with?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, across the board, not just in the walleye world, I think too many people think you need ultra heavy rod, ultra heavy line. I know, like on our panhandlers, we run 4-pound braid, and we've hooked into. I mean, Jake's got I think it was a
29 3/4.
Yeah, walleye on it, and got it. I mean, it's just, it's having, a rod that's going to load up right. I would say it's more about having the right rod, not so much trying to overthink it and be like, oh, I'm walleye fishing, so I need a medium fast or a medium, it's more about having one that's for the sensitivity, and then to go a little bit more like Jake said, but the line, I think that's so overlooked a lot of times. Everybody runs braid, but there's times we got a couple rods that are rigged up with 8-pound mono. And then we've had many cases where for some oddball reason, and it's not all they're seeing is just the line, but there's times that it's something with the way that bait goes through the water with that line versus the braid with a, fluorocarbon leader that just makes a difference. So we always try to go a little bit lighter than most. And then for me, Jake was saying about the rods, I've really started where I went Tennessee handles and wrapping my reels onto the rod. And I'm a huge fan of it. Like I got one and tried it and didn't think I'd like it. And now I am phasing out all my rods with reel seats and going all Tennessee handles. So
then what are you using to attach your reels to the rod?
So I use JT makes a reel tape. It's got their patented, like their sure grip is already on it. And it kind of reminds, like Jake said, it kind of reminds him of his wrap for his baseball bats is how you kind of put it on. It's a slow taper. And then I finish off, and a lot of guys, except for Tom Wynn, will laugh about this, but I finish the ends off with clear fingernail polish hardener.
Oh.
So instead of a lot of guys using electrical tape to finish the end, I actually just put it on the end, and then I'll do 3 or 4 coats of that clear fingernail polish or hardener, and it keeps that in so it doesn't peel up. And then if you want to remove it, you just take an end of a knife and just pull that up, and it comes right back off again. So, that's the nice thing. You can remove the reel tape, change reels, do whatever you need to do. And for anybody that's looking to do Tennessee handles, I suggest putting bands on your reels at first to kind of figure out where you want it positioned. Because that's the nice part about Tennessee handle. Literally, like we have 2 different mag lights that it's pushed further forward than the rest of them because those are the ones we use for drop shot. And it's more we like that balance a little bit better. And then like Jake on one of his, I think you got it pushed further back, don't you?
Yep.
So it's nice because you can tailor it to how you fish. So now it's more comfortable. So
That's a great tip.
I really like that. I'm a big proponent of kind of thinking outside of the box too. I really love that JT tape. My only complaint about it is that I have to have, like, I like to move my stuff around so much. And so, but once you find a good spot, I really like having that tape on there. But I think one thing that I've started keeping in not my tackle box so much, but kind of like my boat bag or like kind of my carry-all is that plumber's silicone tape, because it's non-adhesive and you can seal up the ends to those wraps. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with it. It's pretty versatile just to have in the boat. And so if you, like you said, you could use those bands, or if you want to, test that reel seat, just get a roll of that silicone tape, and then you're able to just like put some wraps on, adjust it, take it out fishing, move it around, and then you're not wasting the JT tape. And then once you find your spot, throw the JT tape on there. And I think that's really helped me kind of figure out where to do. So I like the fingernail polish thing. I'm gonna have to steal some from Emily. I think.
I
No.
will say we do look a little weird at the cash registers. Look at us a little weird when we check out with some fingernail polish.
Jake, wait till you start making baits, and then you go to Hobby Lobby and walk out with $100 worth of glitter.
Oh yeah, that did happen.
Then they give you a weird
that
look.
that was funny. Actually, that was pretty funny. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. So but I do really like the point that you were making. I feel like we strayed a little bit because you were talking about with those grips that you can really adjust where that reel sits on that rod. And so when you're talking about drop shot versus some of these other tactics, I mean, I think that it really helps when you have good control, when you have good balance, and it helps cut down on fatigue. Because if you're there like ripping or jigging baits all day, one of the things is if your rod has that right balance, you're going to be able to do that longer.
Yeah, and that's what today's world. Everybody uses different reels, and on a reel seat, I just feel like it depends on the line you put on. Depends on the. I mean, there's so many variations where that you can have. A 1000, 2000 series, and you get 6 brands, and they're all going to weigh different, right? So they're all going to be a little different in balance point, which the greatest piece is, with having the Tennessee handle gives you that option to set it to where you feel most comfortable on that tactic. And I'll make sure that, I wasn't, by all means, I didn't come up with using the Tennessee handle. We've had Tennessee handles out for quite a while before I finally bought one. Matter of fact, it was Joe Okada that kind of turned me on about it. I had a discussion with him because I seen that he had a couple that way. And I was just like, I don't see how that's, why you would do that. And then once I bought one and started messing around with the position of it, and then the JT rods in themselves with our alien real seats that we have on them are comfortable anyway. Mm-hmm. But there is just something, especially with me fishing a tournament, there is something about that reel tape, especially if it's wet at all and rains, it's just grippy. And I feel like I'm not gripping the rod as tight. Mm-hmm. I'm more loosened up, in my actions. And I feel like it's just doesn't stress out as much as muscle fatigue for me anyway. So
mm-hmm.
It's funny, me and him like different reels, and then when we go to put them on, he goes to put it on for me, and it's like, no, it has to be back a little bit because the weight of it. Like some just totally depends, and it has to be for me and him probably has to be almost perfect because if it's not, sometimes that could cost you a bite in our minds at least.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I think even just when you're talking about like gripping the rod too tight and all of that, when you sometimes in the beginning of the day and you have like this super smooth jig, and then by the end of the day and you can tell like you're kind of lacking and the bites have kind of waned off, and it's like that's exactly what you're talking about. So set yourself up for success.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I guess it's when we go out, like I've always tried to tell Jake, is trying to find that spot that you're comfortable with and that muscle memory. And so it's funny, like even our sleeves on our rods are color coded, and we have the wraps that are on the rods that are color coded for certain techniques. And it just makes everything at ease. You open the rod locker, you're not digging for that and trying to see what bait's tied on. We physically can open a rod locker and go, oh, that's orange, that's blue, that's green, that's red. You just grab it and go. And then we look at the sleeve as the second thing. We got orange. We got like 6 different colors of sleeves too.
We got like camo, American flag, orange.
Yeah.
Green.
So they're all on certain rods, and when we put them away, they go right back in that certain sleeve every time. So
every time.
Being a guide, you have to know, like, as soon as that day starts, you have to get fish inside the boat, and you have to have them. And then by the end of the day, you have to have everything off. You have to have them off at a certain time, and that just makes it a whole lot easier with that kind of rod and reel tape and everything.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because I was wondering, we had started kind of this conversation. Oh, when you go out fishing on your own, how many rods do you bring? What kind of rods? All this stuff. And I was like, ooh, I wonder when you guide, do you let your clients use all of your fancy rods? But it kind of sounds like you do. Look at you. You do.
That's I think kind of the thing that a lot of customers have kind of been shocked at is, the equipment that they get to use while we're guiding them it is top notch. I mean, everything from the boat to the electronics to the rods and reels. I mean, and then also it gives them a chance to use one of those that, you know, they've always maybe been in Shields or a show and picked one up and been like, I just don't know. And I can tell you that there's probably 55 to 60% of the time that people that's never even heard of them after they used them, they probably buy them. I mean, it's pretty good. But then the ones that have been on the fence within minutes are like, yep, done. Oh, you got a promo code? Okay. And they're on their phone. Like, we're still in the middle of a guide trip and they're on their phone. They're like, got it. It's being shipped, you know? So it's kind of funny, but it's one of those deals I've always told people that, you know, it's like playing an instrument. You can start out with the basics, but once you want to get and play, you can only play as good as that instrument. And then to get better, you need better equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I explain that. Cause I know there's always people going, you know, like I laugh because I got friends to be like, oh, Jake went fishing. I'm like, yeah, you know, I helped load up his rods. You're like, he doesn't take his, I'm like, oh yeah, he takes his JT rods when he fishes with his buddies around farm ponds, walking around pitching. I mean, you know, and it's just one of those deals that, you know, once you use them like that and you've gotten used to those rods, it's hard to pick up a different brand. I can tell you I don't even put myself in that circumstance. If I have to pre-fish with somebody else in a boat for a tournament, I bring my own because I have gotten so used to the balance and how they feel that if I get into a different rod and different reel and different pound test, it throws me off. So
yeah.
One thing I will say about that whole instrument thing is that you also can't just be at one level and then your instrument up here. That doesn't really even out. You have to be at the same level as your instrument because you can't just go and buy like the greatest rod and reel ever and then go out and expect to be like as good as him. So
well, none of us can be as good as Tom, but no, that's a great point, Jake. I really like that. I think that it does people should think about that point. Like it's not a status symbol thing, right? You shouldn't be buying equipment just to look good. You should be buying equipment that you get the most out of.
Well, it's like the gear doesn't make the angler,
right?
Like the angler makes the gear. So maybe it doesn't go both ways, but
yeah, no, I really like that, Jake. That was a good point.
But the other thing that I really liked about that, though, is let's say that you are somebody who is, you know, learning or trying to get into fishing more, or maybe you use your gear and looking for what is that next level. You know, when you can book a guide trip and you can try some new gear, but get kind of coached on how to use it, or like, what does somebody else do, or why do you like this, you know, because, you know, anybody can pick up a rod or tackle or whatever, but, you know, to be able to talk about it and kind of explore it, you're going to learn so much more and get so much more out of it. And I love that idea that you can go on a trip and try something new, and hopefully learn something new and probably connect with fish. That's great.
Well, and I like that point you're making, Emily. Like people will go to places like Topgolf and just practice driving or, you know, and have fun that way. And they spend a couple $100 just practicing. Right. And I think that's how people should put their frame of mind, with guides too, is like you're paying to practice and get tips and learn, and you're elevating your own game, you know, when you're by yourself. So that's a good point.
Yeah, like when you say Topgolf, like the equivalent for me is like just going out in the yard, like throwing on a weight on my rod and just going out and casting it. Like putting myself in situations where I can be out on the water, and that can if I don't do that, that could waste me a bite as well. Like, especially with how much pressure lakes have been getting with forward-facing sonar, it's not a bad thing, but how much pressure it's been getting, you have to almost be right on top of them. Mm-hmm. Like going out and practicing almost every day is what could make you better 1% of the time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nothing uncommon. I mean, and for my twin daughters, you know, that are 10, and Jake to be outside, and they're all three practicing pitching, trying to hit a bucket or a cone for distance. Or Jake and I have gone outside and make a game so you can, you know, throw it underhand or try to skip, you know, underneath the trampoline, like. And it's just that practice, you know. I know Jake's worked with some of his friends on bait casters, you know, and that's one of those other things. Like, you know, Jake's helped quite a few of his classmates pick out their first bait caster. So, I mean, it's all, you can't expect to just buy something and use it and be great at it. You got to practice at it. It's a skill set.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess, one of the things that I think of most in that is some people won't appreciate it until that tactic works or until, that practice pays off. And the reason I laugh is because I think about when we were fishing the Wolf River, when we moved a few years ago. And so maybe not as much as we used to, right? But when we would go and we'd look for panfish on the river, and some people would be like, that's hard, or people don't even try. And so we'd be like, oh, all you have to do is go into the back bayous and find some brush and cast to the brush, and people will be like, yeah, I've done that. And it's like, no, you have to like cast into the brush,
well, and it was a learning curve for us too, right? We didn't just go on there, and we weren't just like telling people to do it. Like, it took us like 3 years to figure out like
to be in
the boat position, and I think one story that sticks out in my mind is we're kind of coming down the river a little bit, and we see this log jam, and we were trying to position on it, and somehow we ended up almost sitting on top of it, but our boat was backed up against a log, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna sit here for a second because this is really hard. And there was like 3 logs that were like this, and there was a hole in the middle, and I just like dropped my bait down, and I like caught a fish, and Emily's like, what are you doing? It's like ice fishing. And I ended up pulling like a smallmouth and a crappie and 2 walleyes out of the same hole. Like, they were all sitting in that. And that's what, that's one of those light bulb moments in a story like that, where you're like,
what?
Okay, that's what you have to do. And then you start applying that to different areas in your fishing zone, and you start being successful, and then you can start manipulating some of that information into figuring out other pieces to that puzzle. And so, you guys going out in the yard and practicing and finding, that a trampoline is the same as under a dock. And so that you have that, going back to what Tom said earlier, you have that muscle memory, and it makes it a lot less scary to try and do that once you've been doing it out in the yard a bit, and that's, I think, where we're going with that.
One thing where you also said where you pulled up like a smallmouth and 2 walleye. A couple of things that me and him laugh about is that a lot of bass guys like, you found body water. Where can you find that? The only place that we go to find like smallmouth, especially, we just follow the walleye. Most time where the walleye are, the smallmouth are, and they almost eat the same exact baits.
Oh my gosh, I'm laughing because did your storm just get worse because your internet just flicked in and out like a tiny bit? But I think I got the gist of what you're saying. And, I think it's funny that you're talking about like the smallies and the walleyes going together, because sometimes we've heard about the crappies and the catfish, they go together, and so these theories that these fish, and I think it's one of those like match the hatch or like match the forage type things. Like maybe they're eating similar things or doing similar things, but that's super interesting to me.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things that, we've learned the most with forward facing is not so much the catching part, is just seeing the different species, how they're intermixed, or how you see them. We've seen where we've had, catfish that are stacked up off of some piece of wood structure, but then the crappie are just 2 feet above them. And we've witnessed on live scope some of the big channel cats come up and grab a crappie, and you're just like, oh, and it's just a common occurrence that they're just stacked up. So you're like, oh yeah, if you get the bait past the crappie down to the catfish, you can catch them. And if you're up high enough, you can catch them. So that's one of the key things that I think I know that I've learned a lot from the forward facing, is just start to understand a little bit more, the habits of fish. And, now, especially in the walleye world, everything's blown up so much as it, now it's not pulling a bottom bouncer in 28 foot of water or 16 foot of water. We're actively catching and pursuing walleyes, and, can be 2 to 3 foot of water. If the bait's there and the fish are there, they're there. It doesn't have to be, dark conditions. We've kind of started to figure out a little bit more insight on these fish across the board, regardless of the species. So
Well, and I love actually what you're saying about these walleye right now, because I feel like, oh my gosh, I wish I remember who we had this conversation with. It was really not that long ago, maybe just 2 months or so. But it was about forward-facing sonar and actually walleyes, and about how, this old thought was that walleyes were only on the bottom. You could only get them Lindy rigging or whatever, something of the like. You could only get them at this water temperature, at this time light temperature. Like they're so picky, and then all of a sudden, people are looking at their graphs and like, no kidding, walleyes are suspended. And wow, look at how much they move around. Oh wow, look at what they're doing. And it's like, it sounds almost stupid in hindsight. Of course they do that, but I mean, it took people so long to figure that out, as far as the bite, as far as relating to those fish, as far as relating to that catch, right? And so I think that's really cool, that maybe that speaks to the tackle, maybe that speaks to the rod, maybe that speaks to just simply the graphs that people are noticing that. But I think that's a really great point that people are starting to open their eyes to.
One thing I will say about forward-facing sonar that I've seen is that I always thought that walleye was a finessey kind of presentation, till I started seeing it out there like a big swim bait, right, for bass, because I like catching it that way. And I would see a walleye follow it and eat it. It's like a 6-inch bait. I always used to think that it would had to be like 3 to 4, but in reality, the bigger ones will almost always want that bigger meal.
That's a fun story to be witness of, because we hear a lot by us that the muskie guys catch a lot of giant walleyes because they're pulling big cranks or they're pulling big swim baits, and they end up catching, the 26 plus
like,
fish,
oh,
and they're like, this
walleye.
stupid
Like,
giant walleye.
Yep.
We're like, well, at least you caught a fish today.
And I say, and that's kind of the coolest part, I've seen and got to witness over the years with, because I had probably I was one of the few in my area that had Panoptics when it first came out, and it was a ghost blob and everything else, but just still some of the stuff we learned. And it wasn't just me, it was with Jake. Like, I think it's kind of crazy to see how with his generation, the stuff that he can watch on YouTube, but then also he gets that real world exposure, the forward facing of seeing different brands and seeing how, each of them kind of operate, and things that he's learned, from it. That I think about it, I'm 48 years old, and it took me a long time to realize that, you can catch walleye when it's sunny and only a ripple on the water, and you can do it in 6 foot of water, versus he's kind of, you got to jump start on that. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how this all transpires over time with, especially the younger generation, because they don't have that stereotype for different species. You got to catch them here, here, here. It's almost like every rule is thrown out, and they just go hunt for them now, which is kind of cool to see. So
yeah, that is really cool. And I think for me, one of the cool things about the forward facing has been relating the forward facing sonar information, because you have so much wider, like a further away from the boat view, but relating that to something like the AquaView stuff, putting your cameras down there and being able to see the fish, like see what the fish are actually doing around what the structure actually is, and relating that to your forward facing. It's just such a cool insight. It's almost like scuba diving at that point. Like, you get to see what the fish actually are. You have a good idea on the forward facing, but like, that's not 100% all the time. And you get to see what the structure actually is, and you can put those together, and it's almost more fun than fishing, just learning what the fish are doing. To me, at least, that's one of my favorite things about forward facing. Look at Emily.
She said with my generation is like, I'll get inside the boat and I'll just turn on the graph, like the live scope, and I'll just start fishing. And then like when my buddies get inside the boat and they're just so shocked, I've never really realized that I've almost always had forward facing sonar my whole life. And I've really never thought about it, like never having it. I've almost always fished with it. I've got to like know what kind of species it is so well that I just don't really think about it until somebody gets inside the boat. It's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I've never seen this before.
Yeah, that is pretty cool that you've had that experience. Neat
I'll
insight.
too.
You make me feel old. Just kidding. Oh my goodness. So I guess with all that being said, with open water, the season even just starting for you guys, are you targeting rivers? Your lakes are all open. Where are you headed to?
So I'm doing for instance, both of my tournaments now will be back to back, will be reservoirs / river.
Okay.
And then after that, the guide trips start happening on a lot of the metro lakes around Omaha area for the time being. But then we'll start, possibly being out at McConaughey, Western Nebraska for that trophy walleye bite. So it just kind of, it's one of those things. It's hard for me to say, oh, I'm going to fish more of these lakes. I can tell you though that I'm doing more to these reservoirs because they're just ever changing. It's not like a lake where you got a pretty good consistent depth that doesn't fluctuate. And some of these reservoirs can fluctuate 3 feet, 2 feet each day. So it really makes a difference on, what you're doing and how you're finding these fish. So that's something I'm kind of looking forward to, is trying to do a little bit better, just because of the location I am. We're not far from the Missouri River, but this part of the Missouri River doesn't hold much of the fishing. It's great for cats and stuff like that, but the walleye bite or smallie bite's it's not around here. So I'm not a very proficient river fisherman. And I'm really trying to get that to be better, just because that way I can feel better about that. It's one of those spaces that I'm just not 100% confident with that I want to be. So
yeah, that's how everyone feels on the river. That's okay. Cool. Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Okay. So we have just a few minutes left, and I guess so you were talking about like tournaments coming up. For people who are looking to follow you, do you post a lot of that online?
Yeah, so on my Facebook, on just Tom Sieburg, whether it be Tom's Guide Service Facebook, or even like, for some reason it seems like I've been doing, it's kind of the trendy thing, is a lot of TikToks of pictures and making videos and posting them of whatever the day may be. It's kind of cool for people. It's just a quick reel so they can kind of see what you're doing. So try to do more of that as time goes on. I don't do many write-ups as far as the outline of everything, but I usually share like heading to this destination or fishing this tournament. That's kind of one of my goals for this year. I'm going to start doing more video breakdowns of what's happened during a tournament, just because of
use your fingernail polish to seal off that tape. Yeah, do that.
Yep, it's just a little bit quicker because I can put it in the phone holder when I'm driving back and just do a quick recap of everything. And that's kind of the problem of just kind of what I do. I'm putting a lot of miles on, but then when I get home, I try to spend time with Jake or his sisters or my wife Carmen. So it's like that part just kind of stops, and I got to go do the family stuff, as much as I can until it's the next time to leave. So,
yeah. And we were able to actually take the website, the web address for the guide service, and put it right into that comment section. So for anybody at home who just wants to click on it, there's Josh was scrolling through. There's all kinds of good stuff on here. Do you still have dates open for this coming open water season?
Yep, we still have a few dates here and there. As the year goes on, the weekends fill very, very fast, and especially for us. Around College World Series, that is our busiest time of year, because we're only 35 minutes from Omaha. So when a lot of people are in for the College World Series and want something else to do in between, their team didn't make it that day or this day, we do a lot of people from the College World Series for different guide trips. So that's, if you want something during that time, and I don't remember what time of year that is, but if you look up and see when the College World Series and you want something around that point in time, if you don't get on it now, you're probably not going to get it, because we book 2 guides, myself, and then Jeremy, another one of my guides. It's usually both of us on the water every day during the World Series. So it's pretty epic.
Most of the time my Facebook will also be on his Sometimes guide service. If I'm in a picture, he'll probably tag me in it as well. So
sweet.
I do always love seeing you at the expos, I have to say.
I think you did a pretty cool photo bomb. What was that? A couple years back where you were holding the trophy.
I was holding the trophy. I love that picture. I love that picture. I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
And he snuck in behind you. Yeah, and that's one of the things, for everybody that's, watching that doesn't know, Josh and Emily to us are just kind of like part of a family, with the ice shows we've done over the years, and that's kind of the cool thing with, I always tell everybody, they're like, you really like those? And I'm like, it's until you do them, you don't understand the excitement that we all have. We're like, oh, that's this show. We're going to see so-and-so, it's the only time of year you see them, but you just pick up, and it's 50 questions almost. How's it been? What's going on? Anything new?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool that when those shows come up like that. So.
Yeah, it was 23.
Yeah.
Just Josh was almost there. Give us 1 second, and everybody will be able to laugh. But those are this picture because it is actually pretty funny.
I'm gonna laugh to see how young Jake looks.
So many pictures.
When is Sioux Falls? Is that November?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Yep, it's November. Yep, and that's and that's one of the other things I guess to bring up. For people that want to get into fishing, whether it's ice fishing, open water, go to some of these shows. There's a lot of us that or do these circuits or do guide services. If you stop up and talk to us, we will take the time to talk to you. So
that is true, actually. Yeah, sometimes at the shows, and that's all you have is time.
Yeah. Yep. There it is.
Oh, I do love that.
Sometimes I spend time talking to people I know than actually selling stuff. So that's probably a habit of mine. I probably have to break, but
that's the closest I'm ever going to come to a tournament trophy. So I'm glad you could all experience that with me.
Well, and I have to joke because up before that, Jake wanted to fish tournaments, and it's not the easiest with the schedule, but we fished a panfish tournament, and it was his first tournament. And it's a quick story. We were out fishing and we entered in it, and Jake's like, oh, we got this one. It was a home body of water, just not too far from my house. We do have a lot of hours on it. And it's a catch. You had to get an app. When you caught it, you had to take a picture of the fish on the bump board, take a picture of it on the scale, and it's time marked. And then that was it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got into the crappie so quick, and so many pulling salmos suspended on these flats that we couldn't keep up. So we were chucking them in the live well. And I told Jake, I'm like, once we get, 4 or 5 in there, we'll take a break and do all that. Well, I did not pay attention to the scale, and it was not in pounds.
Oh.
And so probably 5, 6, 8, 9, it was quite a few big crappie. I scaled them, took a picture, threw them over, scaled them, took a picture, threw it over. And then I was looking back through it. I'm like, oh no.
Length.
And lo and behold, not just a couple minutes later, rod goes off, Jake grabs it. And what did you say when we got it in the net?
I said that might be the biggest crappie I've caught in open water.
Yep. And it was like 14 inches and just thick as thick could be.
Like close to 2 pounds.
Yeah.
It was.
And
so cool.
Even though we threw back quite a few, we ended up coming back and winning it. And it was kind of funny because at first the names on the board, they stay the same until they announce it. And they started at 5th place and second, on and first. And Jake just kept looking at me like, we really, I caught that big crappie. Like, what? And then all of a sudden when they said, yeah, we won it. And then we told the tournament director asked to see all the photos because we were the only team that turned in that we had caught like 15 fish that day. And I said, well, that's not even all of them. I said, because there was like 8 of them that we couldn't even use the weigh because I goofed up the scale. So then Jake was like,
that's so funny.
Good thing I caught the big one to help us, Dad. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. So
Win a tournament. I'll probably never help him win a tournament again.
Yeah, well, he's
done.
You
don't even have to do it again.
Yeah,
You got time.
He's earned his keep. Like I said, for people that follow us or don't or go looking, I qualified for the World Championship again. It was on Lake Huron, and my partner couldn't make it, and so we didn't have an alternate. So it had to be somebody in your household. So this guy got volunteered, took him out of school, and we spent 7 days on Huron, and
Awesome.
I think the funniest part was for me was when he's seen the freighter going across, and he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "That's freighter." Like and he's like, you could just see the look in his eyes, like, "What is that doing out here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're on some big water, bud. We're not."
There's lots of water.
That was even the scariest part. The scariest part was day one. We come out of the bay and we turn the corner, and for now on, I made a rule that we only go right, not left, because he made it dip to where it was like at a slant like this. The boat was, and I was almost like, if I would have put my hand more, I could have touched the water. I was like so scared. And then we get off, and you could see like the sweat marks on the handlebars. I was just like, for a second. I was so scared.
Yeah, it's. I tell you what, though, and for people that have kids and want to get into fishing, I 100% urge you to take the time, whether it's from shore with just a bobber and a night crawler. The memories that I have made with my kids, and the memories that I have made with my grandfathers and with my dad, and even with my mother, are something that you can't replace. During the interview that time for the championship, even though, Jake said we wanted to get the top 10, we finished 8th. And I told the one guy, I said, if we would have won it, I would have been done fishing tournaments. And you wouldn't believe in me. People were like, why? And I'm like, because when you could do something like that with one of your kids, I don't think there's any way that you could ever, beat that or even match it again.
Mm-hmm.
But really, at the end of the day, get outside, grab your kids. If you got somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, they still want to go fishing, talk to people, a neighbor, somebody knows somebody that knows how to fish and can expose that kid to the outdoors, because it's a great thing. Because like on the weekends, he's begging me to take him, drop him off at a lake to go fishing. I'll have to worry about when he starts driving, skipping school to go fish a lake because of the bite, versus, probably getting into a lot of trouble with other stuff. So I always make sure to let people know, like, the outdoors is a very special place to a lot of us. Your guys' self included in that. We love the outdoors and the people that we surround ourselves in it. So definitely don't be afraid to try something new and get involved in it.
I couldn't have said any of that better myself. That was perfect. So I guess with that, for people who can't get out, maybe check out the guide service, because that might be a perfect opportunity for you.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, keep joining us these Thursday evenings, because we're going to keep talking fishing no matter what's going on in the season. We're going to be talking all about it. And otherwise, I know that people are going to follow you guys on social media, and so they can find that by your guide service, by your name, by all those good things. And I have to say thank you so much for being here tonight to talk about all this with us. It's been so much fun.
Yep, it was good seeing you guys again.
Yeah. And I'm glad that a tornado did not hit you during our segment. Then to the people at home,
a couple times, so
yeah.
It doesn't look like we're quite out of it yet, but
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope soon. And to the people at home, hopefully you guys have clear skies ahead, and hopefully we are all on the water this weekend. And either way, we'll bring you a fishing report on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.